That's improv.
Opera improv.
Opera improv.
Thank you. Leslie and Chris. And Peter. So, talking about relief from responsibility, this month has been, my theme has been just living a spiritual life. And we talked about life, the light, being the light that you are, and we talked about writing and reading spiritually. Last week I talked about minding your own business. And this week I'm talking about release from responsibility. So before we go any farther, here's what I'd invite you to do. I'd invite you to just drop your head and swing it around and let your shoulders go. And just sort of brush it off. All the stuff that you've been carrying around, the load of the world that you've been carrying on your shoulders for too long. And just let go of it. My grandma, Hetty R., I'm named after her, R stands for the Rebecca. She used to say, God is in his heaven and all's right with the world. And whether you agree with the gender specificity of that, or you agree with the locus of where God is, the truth of the matter is that creative essence, that power, that source is in charge, is wise beyond measure. And we can just let it go. We don't have to be the directors of the world. So, I've been reading Ernest Holmes, and Relief from Responsibility is from his book of never before published lectures of his, and they were published in 1918. The Love and Laws, the name of the book, and this is the second chapter. And as serendipitously happens, it came across my awareness a talk on YouTube that is actually of Ernest Holmes speaking, who is the founder of our philosophy. And he told this story, which weaves together, I think. He told a story of what he called an orphanage. I don't think that's politically correct right now, but anyway, there was the manager of the facility who cared for children, absolutely operated on faith. And one day, there was no food to feed the children for dinner, according to the food manager. And so the food manager was very nervous. And he said at 8 o'clock in the morning, you know, we don't have any food to feed these children dinner tonight. And the manager said, oh, okay, I'll handle it. And so he went into his office and he closed the door and he prayed. And so 5:30 came, still no food. And the food manager is knocking on his door saying, you know, we don't have any food for these children. I don't know what we're going to do. And the director said, it's in prayer. And before he got those words out of his mouth, here arrived this truckload of food. And so, the children absolutely were fed properly, perfectly, based on the faith of the director of the program. And so after the dinner was over, he called the food manager into his office and he said, "I'm sorry, this is not the place for you." He said, "We can't afford to doubt God even for 30 minutes. And that's the whole concept of relief of responsibility. We can't afford to doubt God because knowing the law of reciprocity, that what you think is what you get, doubting for that 30 minutes, 10 minutes is creative. And so, what you think is what you get. And if you try to assume the responsibility for the world's responsibilities will be piled on your shoulders. I don't know about you, but I know I'm not wise enough to direct the world. And so I invite you to join with me in giving that up. Faith is what we're talking about. So I want to tell you this story. I went to the dentist this week. Not today, but this week. And I had my mouth open. And I was lying there like a guppy, thinking, what is the spiritual message here? And just as that thought came to my mind, the hygienist said to me, knowing that I'm a minister, "Can I tell you a story?" Well, sure, I'm always up for stories. And so she told me about this young woman whom they'd never seen before, who had come because she had lost a cap. What do you call those? Crown. And so this young girl didn't have any money. And so she was fearful that this whole dental experience was going to be way more expensive than she could afford. So she said to this hygienist, whom she never met, whose name is Kim, she said, "Kim, will you pray for me before you take that x-ray to see if that tooth is okay?" And Kim was dazzled because nobody had ever asked for her to pray with them or for them before. But they did. I find that so refreshing for someone to ask for prayer and to sit in prayer in the dentist office. So they prayed before they took the x-ray. And sure enough, that tooth was perfect. And all they had to do was re-cement it at NC, no charge. I know. So the rest of the story is that Kim had the idea of applying for treatment for this young girl at the university's dental school, and now she's getting all of her dental work done at the school for NC. Isn't that lovely? Now, I couldn't have figured that out. I don't know about you all, but God knows it's relief from responsibility. We don't have to figure it all out. All we're required to do is to have the faith to know that everything is in perfect divine order. So, here's another story. Last night I was thinking, good story today. So I went to my computer, and here it is. So I'm probably feeling a little fragile. I might have to have a tear or two about this one. So here's the story that I found based on my faith and my trust last night. There was an Olympic diver who was at the university practicing, getting ready to go to compete for the Olympics. And so he went to the pool at night because he was so enthusiastic about it. And this boy was an atheist, this young man was an atheist, raised in an atheist home. And the only training that he had about spirituality, or the only opportunity he had about spirituality, was his roommate, who was a born again, and who was always talking to him and giving him messages and teaching him about the power of faith. And it sort of went over his head, and he wasn't listening and didn't really pay any attention to it, and that was his only spiritual training. Anyway, he was here at the pool that night, and it was dark, but there were skylights, and there was enough light coming through for him to think that he could practice his dives, because it didn't take a whole lot of light. And he climbed up to the highest diving board, standing there in his suit, the swimsuit, in the near dark with only a little bit of moonlight filtering through the skylight. And he approached the diving board, and he got ready, and he was reflected on the wall as Jesus. And he had this epiphany. He was stunned. And he got down on his knees, and he turned his life over to the divine. And as he was praying, the maintenance man went through, flipped on the lights, and the pool had been drained for repair. I know, I got those same goosebumps. Wow. Wow. And how can we ever doubt that essence that I call God is in his heavens, and all is right with the world? It cannot be otherwise. I asked for the story. I received the story. And that was the story I got. And it did give me chills. How can we doubt it? So when we talk about relief from responsibility, it is not for us to figure it all out. Last week I talked about minding your own business. And our business, what is our job to do, is absolutely have the faith, have the trust, have the knowing that we're only required to do that. That's our only responsibility in this world, is to trust that all is unfolding in perfection. And when we do that, that is exactly what happens. To move into that place and that space of absolute, utter faith and trusting. I was thinking about birds. It's springtime, you know, and it's time for little birds to start leaving the nest. And that's that same level of faith and trust. Birds don't know where they're headed. Birds don't know that when they jump out of that nest, that all is going to be well. They just instinctively do it. And God is under their wings, lifting them up, taking them to safety, to exactly the place that they need to be. So this week, I invite you to allow yourself to be lifted up by your faith and your trust, and know that everything is unfolding in perfection. And if you have yes buts, know that that's what you are actually projecting as your faith, the yes but. We, like the orphanage people, cannot afford 15 minutes of doubt, 15 minutes of lack of faith. So that's all the universe asks of us, really. Just to step out in faith. That's our only responsibility. So, I love each one of you. I wish you a week of absolute utter faith and trust. Namaste. So I would invite the practitioners to join with me as we encircle the room with our faith and our trust. So if you have that little niggling, would invite you to put a prayer request in, knowing that these practitioners are holding you in faith, that they are being responsible for your beliefs to guide you through, to give you that total responsibility that is yours. So I invite you to join with me as we pray. I allow myself to have the same level of trust and faith as a little bird standing on the circle's edge of the nest, stepping over the edge, just knowing that all is well, knowing that as I step out in faith, I'll be guided and directed. The right action, the right words, the right opportunities, the right people will be presented to me at exactly the moment that I need it. I allow myself to be in faith and in trust, to shoulder that limited responsibility of just knowing that all is well, that the divine, creative, universal essence is loving, filled with protection and filled with ideas, filled with the know-how to guide me and direct me and keep me safe at all times. So I step out in faith, I step out in power. I step out in trust. I agree to be the best me I can be. I agree to trust the universal, creative energy to flow through me in ways that I could never dream of. I give thanks for the wisdom of my body to create wellness and vibrant, vital, good health. I step out in faith and trust of the universe to provide everything that I need. And so, in deep gratitude, I just allow God to be the responsible party in my life. And I know that it is all unfolding in perfection. I declare it done, and I invite you to join with me at owning it as we say together, and so it is, and amen.